Welcome to the Steelers Breakdown Podcast. He's Penn Live Steelers beat reporter Nick Farabaugh, and I'm John Luciew. We are live and in person in Harrisburg. We aren't live on YouTube as we usually are on Tuesday due to some technical difficulties, but Tuesday, 4 o'clock will be the place to be during the season, even into preseason, because that's when a lot of breaking news regarding the Steelers are going to happen. Nick's going to be at every Tomlin press conference on Tuesday. We'll be looking back at Sunday's game and doing the post-mortem on what happened there, and then looking ahead to the next opponent coming up the coming weekend. So that's going to be the big show all season long, so be there. But right now, it's kind of an unusual situation. Nick was on a football field today. It was in Harrisburg. It was not. Well, there was one Steeler there, but there was also a big, bad Cowboy who has a Harrisburg pedigree and is in line for a major pass rushing payday in the NFL. And he had a little different approach to how he's handling his contract situation. Yeah. I'm talking about Micah Parsons, who threw, for the third year in a running, threw really just a nice football camp for the kids of Harrisburg, and he turns it into a carnival, and he has food trucks there, and he does it up right. So yeah, you had an interesting day, in Harrisburg.
Yeah, I did. As you mentioned, there was a Steeler there. That's Dante Kent, the Steelers' 7th-round rookie. I talked to him a little bit. He's training with Micah Parsons, which is always nice to know. Man, they like that kid, Dante Kent. They really do like that kid. We'll see what happens after the Jaylen Ramsey trade, but he's going to have an uphill battle to make the roster. But Micah is... I'll tell you what, first time I've ever talked to Micah Parsons, I wasn't there when he came out at Penn State. I wasn't at the Combine yet. It was a little too early for me. Obviously, you see him on Twitter all the time and his podcast, but Micah's a really kind of introspective guy. He talked about kind of his why. He's chasing greatness. But I got a pretty good, essentially a back-and-forth one-on-one with him, talking about his contract and just kind of asking him about his mentality. I mean, this guy showed up to parts of OTAs. I think he showed up to the first week. He wasn't there the second week, but then showed up again to the third week, then was at minicamp, and he was working. I mean, it's not like he was off to the side. He was legitimately going through drills with his teammates. And so that was interesting. And his basic message was, I want to work. I want to chase greatness. We want to win a Super Bowl. I think, I'm not worried about this happening. I think it's going to happen. I'm not worried about it. And I'm not worried about anybody else either. He's not worried about TJ Watt. He's not worried about Trey Hendrickson. He's not worried about Aiden Hutchinson because he's going to be the top guy. He's essentially, and what I think is interesting is he's the Watt of this time. Remember back in 2020 when TJ was 26 and he was going to reset the market. It didn't matter what happened. TJ was going to top that number no matter what. TJ's not in the same spot now. He's 30, going to be 31 in October, and TJ has to create leverage. Micah doesn't have to create an actual amount of leverage at all. He's got it all. He's 26. He's going into the prime of his career. He's going to be a star for years to come. He is kind of set. He's going to get the highest amount on the market. And Hutchinson, Aiden Hutchinson, the other young stud, coming off a broken leg. I mean, we're talking about a guy that's significantly injured. So the other young guy that maybe could compete with Micah Parsons is not going to be able to necessarily because of the injury. So Parsons has this kind of mentality that I want to work. If you want to be great, you got to work. If you want to maintain greatness, you got to work. And so, I think when I asked him, I did ask him a little bit about TJ and kind of does that affect you? Because it does feel like TJ's contract, aside from Parsons, is the one that's kind of in motion right now. Hendrickson and the Bengals feels like that one's kind of ice cold. But the Steelers and TJ have been talking at least, and it's active. And even if it's, there's this kind of public sparring back and forth that we've seen, they are active. And he said, I view more him in the Miles Garrett territory, and I'm just not there. And I do think there's something to be said about that we can glean for TJ. One, TJ has to create leverage for himself. We've talked about this. This is kind of his last major contract in the NFL. Could be his last contract period in the NFL. But he has to create leverage for himself. The Steelers, theoretically, and I don't think they are going to want to get this ugly, but they could say to him, you should sign because otherwise we can franchise tag you. I mean, that's not what they're going to do. I doubt it, unless the thing somehow gets so ugly it just falls down the canopy. But they could say that to him. That's their leverage. And TJ's leverage is, I am still really good. And I think people forget about how good he was before he got banged up. I mean, he had thumb, hip flexor, and ankle injury by the end of the year. He was bruised and battered. That's part of the risk in this contract with him. The Steelers kind of have this conundrum of TJ in the first, 8 to 9 games was so clearly still himself. He was still the guy you saw. He's still TJ Watt. And then he kind of fell off because he just got battered down the stretch. And then you kind of looked at how static they were up front, and they didn't really help him much.
No,
that was another thing. So I think, TJ's better than people are talking about him as right now. It's like this calamity that the sky fell on TJ. He was so good last year before the injuries. But the injuries are part of the argument. And the issues with him are going to be so different than the issues with Parsons. Parsons' issues are going to be so different than in his contract than what TJ wants. TJ's best kind of comparison and all of the comparisons that he's going to make are going to be with Miles Garrett. It just is. Feels like the story of his career, right? You've got Cleveland, Pittsburgh, you got 2 premier edge rushers, you got the defensive player of the year battles these two have had, and now you got this contract. And I think all of the milestones Matt Garrett sets is going to be what Watt wants. He's going to want more than 40 per year. He's going to want his 3 years guaranteed. He's going to want 4 or 5 years on the contract, just like Miles Garrett.
Oh, wow.
TJ's only a year older than Miles Garrett. I mean, TJ's 30, Miles Garrett's 29, but Miles Garrett will be 30, TJ will be 31. It's just they're mirroring each other. I think actually TJ's only 10 months older than Miles Garrett, something like that. So, I mean, they are in the same territory. And so, I think we're talking with Micah Parsons, that's what you kind of realize is this is not – he's the TJ this time around. And this contract negotiation this time, John, it's messier because TJ has to create leverage for himself, and it's not a slam dunk for the Steelers. There's risk taken in these negotiations for the Steelers. Because what if he isn't the same player at 33 when that 30-year guarantee would come through? It's a much more it's murkier waters to navigate, and it's tough because he is a Steelers legend on top of all of this. And
Right.
I do think there is something to be said about how the Steelers handle their legends nowadays, considering what happened with Troy Polamalu and how that kind of fell apart when Polamalu retired and didn't come around for a while. I don't think Art Rooney wants that to happen again. And TJ Watt, even despite the lack of postseason success in his career, is Steelers royalty. He's one of the best pass rushers to ever put on a Steelers uniform. And I do think...
And just absolutely beloved by fans who say, there's more fans that I see on social media just say, pay the man. There's been so much turmoil and turnover, dating back to Pickett and Najee Harris, all these Pickens going, there's a meme out there of all these jerseys that people can no longer wear. You cannot have TJ Watt in another team's jersey
it feels
anytime
wrong.
soon.
It feels wrong. I mean, it felt just as wrong as when you saw James Harrison put on a Patriots and a Bengals shirt.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's something to that. Back in the day, the real old-time comparison, I don't think it ever felt right when you saw Franco Harris in a Seahawks jersey.
Right.
I think the Steelers are a tradition franchise that really values their legends in that way. It's not what every franchise thinks about when they think about legendary players, but the Steelers do. They do. They don't want their legends going elsewhere if they don't have to. And so I do think, there's a PR part of this, and by making it a little ugly, TJ probably exerts and grips that part a little bit of them. It's the sentimental part, but TJ's got to get himself as much leverage as possible because the Steelers really have no reason to guarantee him the 3rd year.
So how do you think he handled, because we know he stayed away all off season. How does he handle training camp?
My guess is he shows up and holds it. I think that's what he's going to do. One, I don't think TJ's going to want the fines that are going to accrue. Here's the thing. Mike Tomlin brushed aside the minicamp hold that out, right? I mean, the Steelers do not have to fine TJ for minicamp if they don't want to. They can go to TJ and say, okay, we'll waive it, just show up to training camp. I mean, when he misses training camp, he's getting fined. The money's going to start racking down. And I think that's significant. Chris Jones lost almost $3 million when he held out. He missed a game even. So, I mean, that's significant. It's not like you're burning cash, essentially, for TJ. And, he's a player that really doesn't need to be there and committing. He doesn't. I remember the last time he held in and everyone thought it was going to be a disaster. Then he tied the single season sack record. Mm-hmm. He's training with top trainers, his brother, everyone, right? Like TJ is working and there's communication between Mike T and Omar and TJ. This is not like a radio silent thing that where these guys haven't talked. They're talking. It's contentious, sure, but it's not like the communication channels have been shut down. Like Terry McLaurin and the Commanders right now haven't talked contract since his minicamp holdout. They haven't talked in a month. And, I think to at least continue a good faith showing, I think TJ best option would be to show up and hold in. And
okay.
I don't think, Mike T's dealt with hold-ins. Deontay Johnson did it. Minka did it. TJ did it, obviously. I think, he's not going to be upset if TJ shows up and says, I'm not going to work in team period. What? It's more reps for Jack Sawyer. He's going to be happy to see Jack Sawyer playing more. And then TJ's around Sawyer, and he's around Herbig, and he's around some of those young guys, and that's helpful. And I just think, TJ showing up is a show of good faith to say, I still want to be a Steeler. I just have to exert leverage. I have to try and get mine. And I think that is something, when you're talking about contract business negotiations, that's something to think about. And so if TJ, if he misses training camp, if TJ wants to make this ugly, that's how you do it. And if he doesn't feel like there's any give or any way to move this forward, I guess that's the option you take. But I do think, the good faith idea, the fact that communication channels are open, that they're at least talking through these things, even though there is really big things to overcome in the guarantees and the length of the contract. And I don't think they're very close right now. I do think it does make sense in a lot of regard for TJ to show up and hold in, where he doesn't even have to worry about getting hurt or anything like that, to kind of give the Steelers like, hey, I still want to be here.
Well, by doing that and meandering around St. Vincent as the throngs of black and gold fans flock to Old Latrobe, he'll certainly have them on his side, and they will be glad to see him at least on the practice field, if not in, like you said, the team drills and that type of thing. There was sort of reports about another San Fran wide receiver wanting a new deal or a trade, and there were direct comparisons made to the Steelers being in that market, and we know how that turned out last season when we were looking for a number 2. Is this another much ado about nothing, another distraction? Jawan Jennings?
Yeah, I think it's likely Jawan Jennings gets a deal with the Niners. That's the state of their room right now, and kind of calls for him to do that. Ayuk's still coming off the injury. Pearsall's a little bit unproven. They have talent in that room. It's just Jennings was kind of the guy that stepped up when Ayuk went out. Now Deebo Samuel's gone, obviously.
Right.
And, he was really good last year. He almost had 1,000 yards, 77 receptions. He's a great blocker. If he's going to get traded, the Steelers should be all in on this. He fits perfectly with Arthur Smith's offense. You talk about a blocker. You talk about a guy that makes tough catches. This guy is critically underrated. He's criminally underrated in the NFL right now. I think Jawan Jennings has been a really good receiver for a long time that just hasn't been able to get his shine because Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, there's so much talent in that skill group. And then when he got the chance, you saw a really good football player. And so if this is a chance to trade for him, even cost adjusted, I don't care if you're talking about Gabe Davis, Keenan Allen, and Amari Cooper, their contract cost is going to be lower than Jawan Jennings because you're going to pay Jawan Jennings like $15 million a year with the new extension. But he's 28, so he's still young enough to where could be part of your future receiver core for your quarterback, along with DK. Like that's your future, I think. If you sign him, it's him and DK for the next few years, and that's, I think, important to have. If he's the best option on the market, even cost adjusted to me, I think it would cost maybe a 4th-round pick. I'd pay that every day of the week for this guy. I really like Jawan Jennings. If they can get him, I'd go get him. I'm not optimistic about him being available on the trade market. I do think San Francisco gets this done. But if there's any shot of them getting him, they should absolutely be after him.
Good, yeah, and I think that's the way to look at it. Let Omar Khan make calls, take his shot, but odds are, San Francisco they just paid Purdy a boatload of money. They need to give him somebody to throw to. So yeah, odds are he stays put. But looking ahead to who will be coming to training camp in Latrobe very shortly, what's your most interesting storylines that you want to follow?
Yeah, I think there's a few ways to view that. I mean, obviously, I'd like to get to know the Steelers, the new Steelers. I like to Jaylen Ramsey, especially Johnny Smith. Just get to know these guys a little more. I always think that's a really good part of training camp for me as media. Is it's such an intimate setting. I am able to get to know these guys a little more, and that does help a lot. So I'm interested in that. But storylines on the field, I mean, I think you have to look at safety, free safety specifically. Do they bring someone else in? Is Juan Thornhill really the guy? I mean, with no Minka, how does it even look? I think that's significant, right? It's going to be weird not seeing 39 back there at free safety. And so I think that's a big story for them. Kind of figure that out. I think, we talk about wide receiver. Can Roman Wilson, and not even Calvin Austin. I think I know what Calvin is to a degree. Calvin can get better. But Roman Wilson, I mean, he's one of the biggest storylines of camp. Can this guy become something? I think, running back's a fun thing to talk about. Caleb Johnson and Jaylen Warren, I think, are going to be two fun guys to watch.
Yeah.
And then my other area to really watch is offensive tackle. I mean, Broderick Jones and Troy Faltano are going to be so key to this team. So there's a lot of things to watch. I mean, I can talk about the corners and how they deploy Jalen Ramsey.
Right.
How do they deploy Jonnu Smith on offense? And Aaron Rodgers, obviously, is going to be a storyline himself. There's a lot of storylines this year for the Steelers, but really my things all kind of come down to these questions that I still have about the team. And so this is going to be a training camp that's really fun. It's not going to be like last year where we were talking, Fields and Wilson every day. And,
right.
Wilson getting hurt during the conditioning drill and all of that. But it is going to be different this year because the Steelers kind of planted their flag on this we want this win now kind of mode, at least, while also looking towards the future. The Steelers are kind of trying to thread this needle, right, where they're trying to be a winning team this year, but then obviously are waiting in 2026 to try and go and get themselves a quarterback. So all of that matters when you kind of pop it together and kind of contextualize it all. But yeah, I'm really excited to see what some of these things kind of manifest on the field.
Well, and Nick came into Harrisburg last night, and he got off the road, and I took him to one of my favorite watering holes, and we were talking about training camp, and we were talking about Jaylen Ramsey and the rap that Nick had heard from some media in Miami that he's a all business guy. He's not necessarily a rah-rah guy for the other players, or he's not going to take people under his wing. His relationship with fans, like the many who are going to flock to St. Vincent to get up close and personal with their favorite Steeler, that's going to be interesting. It's going to be just interesting to watch this one time, a superstar guy who's been knocked down a couple of pegs. When you get traded away, and you've been on a few teams, you're kind of knocked down a peg. But I think he kind of obviously is buying into this defense, and I think he's buying into being a chess piece in that secondary. So it'd be interesting to just watch him. And I think last night we were groping for the word to describe him, and I think I came up with it today after thinking about it. Enigma.
Yeah,
he's an enigma because he's a good player. He is very coachable. He will do what he's asked. He buys in if he believes in your defense and your coaching and your scheme, but he doesn't feel he has to do anybody else's job or be responsible for anybody else. I guess that's the story.
Listen,
on him.
The rap I've kind of gotten, and you guys have seen some of that. I had David Furones on from the Sun Sentinel in Miami, and he kind of talked about this a little bit. I've heard it from people in LA. I've heard it from people in Jacksonville about how Jaylen Ramsey is, and he seems to have kind of evolved. When he came in, he was a very rambunctious guy. He kind of was an energy bug almost, and I think he's toned that down a little bit now. He's kind of quiet. He doesn't run to the media. He's not a guy that likes cameras in his face. In the locker room, he's kind of quiet. He's to himself. He's watching his film. He's studying the playbook. He's watching opponents. He's very business oriented. He's focused on winning football games, and I think that's the thing. He didn't respect Mike McDaniel's leadership. I think that was the big thing in Miami. There's been a lot of reports about Jaylen Ramsey and why he exited Miami, and a lot of it was he was causing some ruckuses and didn't show up to meetings, and some of that, was essentially viewed in kind of the way I was told as it's kind of Ramsey's way of almost kind of revolting against leadership maybe he doesn't believe in, or trying to kind of knock sense into somebody.
Yeah.
It's kind of the way Jaylen does things. He's a guy that didn't love his usage the first year in Miami under Vic Fangio. They changed coordinators. He was used much more like he's probably going to be used here with Pittsburgh, where he was outside, slot, a little bit all around. But he loved his usage when he was in Los Angeles, because he played the star position there, which essentially means he played outside, he played slot, he played safety, he played dimebacker. It was basically wherever they needed help, he would play. And Raheem Morris was the DC there, and that's Mike Tomlin's best friend. And I'm sure Mike Tomlin got a very glowing recommendation of Jaylen Ramsey from Raheem Morris and kind of how to use him and everything. And I think that's part of why Ramsey's really excited. Not just because Mike Tomlin's Mike Tomlin. And I can't tell you enough how Mike Tomlin is revered around the NFL. I just can't tell you. These players love him, Jaylen Ramsey included, love Mike Tomlin and love what he does. But the fact is, Jaylen Ramsey loved playing under Raheem Morris.
Okay.
And the reason he got traded from L.A. was more contract kind of oriented and simpler to that, but he loved playing in that defense. And so I think the Steelers are going to use him in very similar ways to how L.A. used him. Even if he's not the player he was in L.A., he's still a really good player. He's still a really good athlete. And so Ramsey's kind of an interesting person, I think, to observe from the locker room perspective. But I also mentioned this to you last night. He doesn't necessarily have to be the leader if he doesn't want to. This does have Darius Slay. And Slay has been there, done that. He's 34, going to be 35 in January. He's been a Super Bowl winner. Slay is the very definition of an extrovert. He's everywhere. He's talking with everybody. He's chatting it up. He's going out of his way to teach Joey Porter Jr., whatever. So if Jaylen doesn't want to be that, he doesn't have to be that. Yeah. But he is a guy that adds, a different locker room kind of feel. He's all business. He's all about buy-in. And you have to make sure he buys into what you do. It's kind of very much similar to an NBA player. If you're NBA superstar, because that is much more player-oriented than the NFL is. The NFL is way more team-oriented. But, superstars in the NBA mean everything.
Right.
But if that superstar doesn't buy in, I mean, they'll request trades, they'll get out of places. That's all around the NBA. Ramsey kind of takes a similar mentality where it's, I need to believe in this team. I need to believe in this scheme. I need to believe in my role. I need to believe in the leadership style. I just think he lost that in Miami. He didn't believe in Mike McDaniel's leadership style. He didn't believe that a lot. And so I think adding him to Pittsburgh, where he respects Mike Tomlin, the Steelers are going to know how to use him because Mike Tomlin and Raheem Morris are like that. And I think they're going to use him a lot similar to L.A. when he was his most happiest post-Jacksonville. In Jacksonville, he was all outside corner and was one of the best corners. But in L.A., he kind of changed the way he played. And so I think Ramsey's going to be a really fun player to watch because I think he may be a little misunderstood by some people who just read the headlines of why he was traded. But that comes from a place in Jaylen Ramsey that I think is about winning football games. So
can't argue with that, and we will definitely be watching Jaylen. The other Jaylen Warren, deserves watching because I just remember back in his first Steelers training camp when he was an afterthought, a nobody. Najee Harris was the first-round draft pick, and Warren just kept hitting the holes and hitting the blocks and just the fire plug that he is, and never takes a play off. And here we fast forward. Najee is shipped out of Pittsburgh. They spend a second-round pick on Caleb Johnson, and all the buzz. If you look at social media and fantasy football, and all the buzz seems to be around Caleb Johnson. And once again, you have Jaylen Warren, who does nothing except work exceptionally hard and do everything he's asked and perform, seems to be at risk of being overlooked again on his own team, just when it seemed like things were clearing out in that backfield for him. So, how do
the perpetual underdog?
Yeah.
I mean,
so
that's what he is. He's a perpetual underdog. I mean, this guy. If you don't know Jaylen Warren's journey, this guy is the all-time rushing leader in the state of Utah for high school yards. I mean, he is. he broke the state record, and I think he rushed for it. Just, I mean, you look up these stat amounts, you can find them if you look for them. I think it's insane. I think he rushed for like 4,000 yards or something in his senior year. It's like absolutely bonkers numbers. And the only offer he had, he sent his film out to everybody. He attended camps. He did everything he could to try and get an offer. The only college that offered him was a JUCO named Snow Community College, and that's where he went. Made a name for himself. Was great there. Went to Utah State. Made a name for himself at Utah State. Then went to Oklahoma State, had a really good year. And even though he had a really good year at then a Power 5 school, he still goes undrafted. One of the best pass-protecting backs I've ever seen come out as a rookie. And he's undrafted. I mean, it's unbelievable. I remember, John, I talked with Eddie Faulkner about this at minicamp. And I was like, how did Jaylen Warren go undrafted? You know how rare it is to find guys that are this polished as pass protectors coming out of college? He's like, he didn't go to an offense that helped him showcase that, and he's just not the type of running back that people look for. He doesn't have elite speed. He's a little small. He's a guy that has been in a rotation for a lot of his college career until he took the lead job there at OK State. He just has this weird journey where somehow he continues proving himself, and then he keeps falling back into so far he's been undeniable. It's been funny, and now he goes to Pittsburgh. And obviously earns the running back 2 job his rookie year because he's just so impressive. He usurps all those guys, and he just takes more and more of Najee Harris's workload over the years. And by the end of last year, he was out snapping Najee down the stretch. The writing was on the wall. Najee was going to leave. And this is Jaylen Warren's chance. And the Steelers go out and draft Caleb Johnson, who I think everyone's talking about. Caleb Johnson's going to be the starter by maybe week 1 or the end of September.
Yeah.
And while that wouldn't be stunning, because I think Caleb Johnson's a really good football player, we keep forgetting about Jaylen Warren. And I think people are talking about Jaylen Warren as if he's just some scrub. And I can't tell you how much I disagree with that, or that he's injury prone. He's missed 3 games in his career. He had a knee injury last year and then had a hamstring pull his rookie year. This guy has not been, perpetually unhealthy over his career. I mean, running backs to miss 3 games in your first 3 years, it's pretty good for a running back.
Yeah.
Even a backup one. There's this kind of thought that, can he carry the rock? Can he carry the load? Well, who knows? But he sure did carry a heavy load at Oklahoma State. So there is that. He's bulked up a little more. He's kind of changed his body to try and take on a bigger load. He's going to play a lot this year. He's a pass protector. He's a receiver. He's a really solid runner. I mean, we're talking about a guy here that wouldn't shock me if he has a breakout season and shuts everyone up again.
I would love it.
Could he stave off Caleb Johnson even? I can't. I'm not stunned if he would. I think Jaylen Warren is so much better than people think. Go back to his 2023 season, okay, when he was fully healthy the entire year, and look at his tackle breaking numbers. This guy, in terms of his tackle breaking numbers, literally had one of the most productive and efficient tackle breaking seasons since 2010. I mean, he broke so many tackles per touch. He had so many broken tackles per yard. Like, it was insane. The per rate stats were elite. I mean, he was elite in terms of getting out in space, catching the ball, turning it into something. He was a spark plug for them in 2023. And so I think people forget about that. And last year down the stretch, even though they were losing, he was playing really well. Okay. And he was one of the bright spots when you go back on film. He was really good when he finally got healthy last year. This is a really good running back. Is he a lead dog running back? I think that's a question that maybe we'll find out the answer to this year.
Right.
But this guy's a really good player. And I think people are underrating Jaylen Warren. I think he's going to be much better than people think. If he leaves after this year, I think he's going to get a nice contract somewhere where he's going to play well wherever he then goes, or from the Steelers themselves if they extend him.
Right.
This guy's a good football player. He's the type of football player you want on your team. He runs out every play. I mean, John was only there for 1 day with me at minicamp, and every time Jaylen Warren touched the ball, or even when he was going to teammates, he'd run down to the end of the field and run back. He gives you everything he has. He wears his heart on his sleeve. So Jaylen Warren, man, I wish people gave him a little more respect. Because he deserves it. And there's even people, that talk about his rushing efficiency is all because he gets it on 3rd downs. Guys, when he runs the ball on 1st down or 2nd down and long, which is 10 yards, which is really 8 yards or longer, over his career, he's averaged like more than 6 yards per carry. I mean, we're talking his success rate's like through the roof. Like he's got a really good success rate, plus the yards per carry. I mean, his efficiency numbers on when the boxes are stacked are pretty good. Like it's not like he hasn't had success against stacked boxes. I just there's a lot that people knock him for that I don't think is valid necessarily when you look into it. This is a really good player. And I think if I were the Steelers and if I was a Steeler, if I were looking at it from a fan perspective, I don't know how you can't be super elated about having what I consider to be two very, very good running backs.
Well,
and you
right.
hope that the offensive line and the tight ends and the schematics part can really hit, because I think if it does, the running backs could be really, really dynamic for you and elevate your offense. But obviously, we'll see. Those are questions that have to be answered.
And those answers will start coming in training camp, and certainly we'll be watching that backfield for any idea of what the pecking order is going to be. So give us a quick rundown of, okay, when things gear up in Latrobe. What's the schedule?
I mean, so they report on Wednesday, so that'll be move-in day. I'll be there talking with guys. I'm sure we're going to get, Aaron Rodgers and Jaylen Ramsey and Johnny Smith. Mike T will talk that day as well. We'll find out if there were any mysterious injuries that happened or of sort. So all of that will pop out. And then their first practice is Thursday, so next Thursday. So 9 days from now,
okay.
They will be on the practice field. That's crazy to think about, isn't it? Because it's been the lead up to it. But they will be on the practice field next Thursday. That will be non-padded. Usually their first 3 or 4 practices don't have pads. So they will practice Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So none of those will have pads. They will be off Monday. Then Tuesday will likely be their first padded practice.
Last Tuesday in July. Yes. I'll be out there. We'll be doing a podcast from out there. We'll be tag teaming on some feature stories about some of the most interesting storylines in training camp. And speaking of that, Nick and I's latest collaboration on Cam Hayward, the quintessential Steeler, the last real Steeler, according to many fans in Pittsburgh, a guy that with a direct connection to the legends, who are storied. A guy like that, a guy who upholds the tradition. We did sort of a quintessential feature on him, so check that out on Penn Live. Check out everything Nick's doing. It's just gonna get more and more from here as training camp starts and the 2025 team takes shape in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. So go Steelers, and we'll see you back here every Tuesday throughout the season.